thing that we should have done time ago. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, talking, yes, Ohio State football live. I bring on Tony Gerdeman on a regular basis, Steve Helwagen, Claire Crawford, but this is like heaven. I've got all three of them at the same time. This is amazing. All right, so 100 weeks later or something like that, 100 shows later, here we are just about 2 years later. Kevin, for some reason, his looks have declined precipitously, but we're not going to comment on that. Kevin, we still love you. But here we are for Buckeyes Live for a 100th time. Thanks to Steve Helwagen from Bucknuts 247 Sports, Tony Gerdeman from Buckeye Scoop, and yes, the late arriving Kevin Noon, who's only made it for about 90 of these or whatever it is, from Buckeye Grove. Join him right there on Rivals. Guys, how's it going today?
Oh, great.
Wow. Everybody out there, keep in mind, this is 100 weeks of this with these guys, and they've put up with me for 100 weeks, and they keep coming back for some reason. So we hope you appreciate the insight, the information, the knowledge that they bring, and I think there's a little experience sprinkled in there as well with these three covering Ohio State football. All right, so leave your comments, your questions, your debate topics there in the live chat. Keep in mind that the Super Chat's available as well to help us keep going for another 100 or more. All right, I want to hear about this offensive line. So the three here, Tony, Steve, and Kevin, able to converse with what? Offensive line coach and a couple players?
Yeah, Greg Stadrawa and 4 linemen, yes.
Steve, we'll start with you. Anything that you drew from the offensive line conversation this week?
I'm going to defer to the other two because I was getting my second COVID shot during today's press conference. So I'll listen and react, I guess, to what I hear from the others.
To Steve's defense and credit, he did tell me that. I was blanking out. Steve, let me know that. So, Kevin, we'll start with you.
Well, I missed the beginning of Stadrawa because I was at the chiropractor. I got it in the play. That's why I was going like that.
I inadvertently missed the hand signal. I had already started into my approach. So Tony, you're our third option here. I hope you feel good about that.
Actually, I had dozed off and I missed the entire Zoom. No, it was we got to talk to Greg Stadrawa, Thayer Munford, Nick Petit-Frere, Luke Weipler, a redshirt freshman backup guard center, and then Paris Johnson. And my biggest takeaway is that it sure seems like it's going to be Paris Johnson at right guard for the Buckeyes this year next to Nick Petit-Frere as try to figure out where Harry Miller and Matt Jones will end up working. I think we'll see one at left guard, one at center. It just depends on who will be there in the fall because Harry Miller is out right now. So Matt Jones is getting, I think, a lot of the first team reps. Luke Weipler is getting some reps there at center as well. That's why I asked Greg Stadrawa today if Harry Miller would be in the best 5 linemen because that's what he's looking for. I know there's speculation that Harry Miller's not going to make the starting lineup because people want DeJuan Jones in there and they want Paris Johnson and they want Matt Jones. But I asked Stadrawa if Harry Miller would is it a safe assumption that he's going to be in the best 5, your 5 best? And he said, yeah, it's a safe assumption. So when he gets back in the summer, he was at left guard last year. So it just depends on, do you want to move him to center? That was always the plan. But Matt Jones getting work at center this spring will give them an opportunity to, I guess, measure them against each other and figure out where they want to go. And then, of course, they will probably compete a little bit in August to see exactly who they want at center. But I honestly think the 5 best are set right now. And then, they have a 6th guy in DeJuan Jones, a 7th guy in Luke Weipler, and Josh Fryer, Rich. I don't want to mention everybody because, Kevin wants to talk, but this is as deep as I've ever seen it at Ohio State in terms of the offensive line.
Yeah, they've gone through so many times where it's been 5+1 or 5+1.5, and you just don't know. And, the thing is as we sit here in April and, you never want to speak anything into existence. You just don't know what health and depth are going to look like once you get to the start of the season or whatnot. But they certainly seem to have a second wave who are ready to go. Tony brings up, DeJuan Jones and Luke Weipler, and you got like Enoch Viamahi. I mean, some other guys that, that saw playing time last season. So, there certainly is going to be a lot of push there. I think we do know who the 5 are going to be, but, don't tell that to the guys who are 6 through 9 right now, because they're going to continue to push these guys. And, you sit there and you look at a depth chart, and the question was kind of asked to some of the guys or whatever. You look at a depth chart, especially like with somebody like Paris Johnson, and you think that, you're coming in and you're going to be a tackle. And then, the best path for you to get on the field is sliding inside the guard, and not only sliding into guard, but, you sit there and you think that you're going to play one position and you're going to play on one side of the line potentially. And now you're playing inside and reverse handed. And I mean, this is a really important time with Ohio State losing a couple players on the interior line. It was so critical for them to have spring practice, and knock on wood, we've made it through whatever it is, 8 of them now. The development just means so much to this team.
Thought Kevin had possibly turned a motivational speaker here, speaking things into existence. Very nice. Steve, your thoughts about the offensive line?
Yeah, I agree with Tony. I think you got to be very optimistic about where things are at right now with the offensive line. You've got 2 studs, it seems, at tackle with Thayer Munford and Nicholas Petit-Frere, who are kind of anchoring things at both ends. And then I think however it shakes out in the middle 3, it's going to be fine. I think Luke Weipler, or however you're pronouncing it, Weipler, at center has been a very pleasant surprise for them. And there were some reports that he was working with the ones during one of the practices that the media got to attend. So that was a good thing for him. Harry Miller, obviously that didn't go so well last year at Michigan State. I think was the game. The snaps were everywhere all over the place. And again, kind of pressed into that job, perhaps at the last minute when Josh Myers was ruled out due to COVID. So given a full offseason, a chance to run up to it and take that job, maybe he would handle it. And of course, you got to like what you're getting right now out of Matthew Jones. He filled in last year, was awesome. So Paris Johnson, jury's out on him as an every down guy. I mean, we've seen little drips and drabs of him here and there during the games last fall. But is he a guy that can put together a full body of work over an entire game? Remains to be seen. But I would agree with what the guys are saying, that you got options, you got depth, and you got talent. So I'm excited that that this offensive line's starting to come together.
One I'll mention, like I always call him Luke Weipler, and then he's introduced today as Luke Weipler. So his mama calls him Luke Weipler. I'm going to call him Luke Weipler. But he had talked about there's an opportunity to play this year. There's an opportunity to start. There's 2 jobs open on the inside, losing Josh Myers and Wyatt Davis. And Stadrawa told a story about how the day after the Alabama game, the players are all sent home. Go home, go be with your families, because they hadn't seen their families in months. And the day after the Alabama game, Weipler sends Stud some video of him working out that day at the Woody Hayes Athletic Center, asking for some tips and some just critiques on what he's doing. And so that gives you an idea of what he is trying to accomplish as a young player, a redshirt freshman at this point, I believe. And so that's he's not the only guy doing that. And it's a mentality of, you think you've got the 5 that are set, but as we've seen, 6, 7, 8 guys. I mean, Max Ray was thrown into the Michigan State game last year at right tackle. I don't know that he'd ever played more than 4 or 5 snaps in a single game. And that was his 3rd or 4th year last year. And he did really well. And that's just a testament to the entire offensive line, the way they all prepare. And it starts in the winter, builds in the spring. And the other thing, Stadrawa said that he's got 11 guys on it at offensive line. This is their first spring, meaning they didn't have one. Nobody had one last year. And even like Harry Miller, this would have been his first spring. And he's missing it. And so you've got juniors on the team who are experiencing their first spring. So there's a lot of development, but the depth is pretty incredible.
Weipler, who says tomato
Luke.
anyway?
It's called Luke.
Does anybody
I
out there
think Gordon
actually
Ramsay does, and he's pretty accomplished at what he does.
tomato? Okay.
You donkey.
I always heard that comment, tomato, but I always thought, who says tomato? Okay,
Yeah,
they're out
right.
there. Tony Gerdeman, Buckeye Scoop, Kevin Noon, Buckeye Grove, and Steve Helwagen from Bucknuts 247 Sports, talking Ohio State football for 100 times here at the Voice of College Football. If you want to mask Ohio State or 35 other teams, please go to voiceofcollegefootball.com and register for free. We get you the coupon, you get the free mask, and 20% off your first purchase. I made this statement. It might have been one, possibly at the outside, 2 weeks after the national championship game, that we are going to be discussing the quarterback battle every week. So we might as well just get used to it, or you guys will be discussing it. I will learn and listen for the next, 40 weeks. And here we go with David Knight. Of course, another update. They're at least practicing. And since you guys get to see these guys stretch, you should have tremendous insight into who's the most flexible, at least, I think. Steve, we'll start with you. The latest in the three-man quarterback battle.
Yeah, update on the quarterback battle. I mean, we don't get to watch a lot of the 11 on 11. I think maybe 10 plays of that, 15 plays, who knows, the other day out of, 15 days of practice. I mean, they're probably going to have 400 plays of that. So I don't think that the percentage of the amount of time that we get to watch is enough to make any kind of a value judgment. That's the first problem. The second problem is Ryan Day isn't taking the bait and isn't listing the guys 1, 2, 3 on a daily basis for public consumption. So, you just go off what you're hearing, little drips and drabs again here and there. All you can go by is what you see, and you see that Stroud is consistently taking the reps with the ones, then Jack Miller 2, and McCord 3. McCord did throw an interception, it sounded like, in the red zone drill the other day, but my guess is all three of the guys have thrown interceptions at points in time when the media wasn't there. So, you can't draw any conclusions from it. You can't get excited about it. I think what you have to be excited about are the raw skills of the individual guys who can each drive the ball down the field and make plays. And so, again, not enough evidence to where we can concretely say this guy is going to start. And the thing is, I was asked about this the other day, just tooling around town. A friend of mine asked me about it, and I was like, who knows? Even today, they're only 8 practices into spring football. They'll have another 7 practices here and 29 practices in the preseason. So you've got another 36 practices or something, 37 practices to where that decision can be made fully before the first game. So I'm not of a mind to worry too much about who is number one today. And I don't even think we can truly speculate who is number one today, other than to go off what they've shown us, which is Stroud slightly, then Miller, then McCord. But you could basically, throw a blanket all over all three of them, and they'd be all basically in the same spot.
Yeah, we're going to be asked about it each week, and that's fine. I mean, it's really the most visible story out there. So, I'm ready to answer questions each week about the quarterback position, but it's, to go to a David Byrne thing, same as it ever was. I mean, we're not going to really know a lot at this point because of the fact that, they're in spring practice. They're not going to name a starter. They're not going to name a pecking order at the end of spring. We're not going to have anything in summer. We're not going to have anything for a good part of fall practice. I mean, it would not surprise me the way that we've moved away from depth charts and everything that we don't really know for sure until somebody trots out there at TCF Bank Stadium on the first game of the season when Ohio State plays at Minnesota. So, we can sit there and gather, the fact that, as Steve had said, and we've all seen that CJ Stroud goes out there for the first reps, but they're fully aware that we're there. So, I mean, they can sit there and control a message by doing whatever they want to. But, yeah, we've kind of seen the order of Stroud, Miller, and then McCord. But, as soon as we're ushered into the Biggs lobby, and on our way out of there, they could flip it around. So I'm assuming all three of these guys are getting to work with the ones and getting to work with the twos and whatnot. So, it's just a matter of being able to go out there, put in good work, learn the offense as much as you can. They're not really installing, they're installing what it is they do. They're not installing anything, preparing for an opponent or any of that kind of stuff. It's, get good fundamentals. You guys have not really been involved in a lot of collegiate practices. For you two, CJ and Jack, you guys were here, but you were backing up Justin Fields. Here's your opportunity to get a lot more of that fundamental stuff that you would have lost last year. And then, I think it's just going to be a situation of come like August 15th or something like that. I think we really kind of circle back to this at that point and see if we really can gather anything else, because other than that, it's just all a focus on making sure that they understand the tenets of the Ohio State offense, that they have footwork, they have, they're managing, release point, things like that. So, I don't know. We're no closer to knowing anything, and I don't think that there's going to be any grand moment in the coming couple of months that we're going to sit there and say, that's the clue we needed. Now we know what's happening.
Yeah, and the clue is just when we're there, if it's always the same guy taking the reps with the one, that's the one clue we have to go on right now. But Day says they rotate through and it changes every day, which is also, I believe, what he used to say when it was Justin Fields and Matthew Baldwin, and we know how that went. But the good thing is I don't see a huge difference between any of these three quarterbacks, which, knowing how talented they all are. I think whoever wins the job is the favorite for the all Big Ten quarterback, or maybe even the silver football, and is a Heisman contender. And I think any of the three are talented enough to do it. And just depending on the day, one guy will have a good day. Next day, somebody else. And then, maybe towards the end of camp, Kyle McCord is really starting to look like he belongs. What will be fun is when everybody gets to see them participate in the spring game. Everybody has their one glimpse, and that will be where they make their big time judgment. And I'll just remind people that's one of about 30 or 40 practices. That's just one slice of what the quarterbacks are doing. So I wouldn't go crazy, because we've seen performances in the past where quarterbacks have been up and down in a spring game and has had no bearing on their actual performance. And Justin Fields his numbers weren't great in 2019 in that spring game. And people were overreacting to that, and I pointed out all but three of his throws hit receivers in the hands. They just didn't catch them, and a few of them he had to throw away. And so, don't go overboard on the spring game performance. Even though the Wednesday after the spring game, we will definitely go overboard on it.
4 for 15, if I remember correctly, for Justin Fields. That was splattered all over social media for days, that he was a disaster. Things changed, or maybe that just didn't matter much, I think would be the latter. Couple things, Tony. Let's rewind about a minute here. What was the statement about Heisman candidacies and so forth for the winner of this quarterback battle?
Sure, you're the Ohio State quarterback. You're going to throw for 3,500, 4,000 yards, 40 touchdowns. I mean, that's just what Ryan Day does. Now, it's going to be a guy who's never done it before, and so there's certainly a lot of projecting. But you've got Chris Olave, you've got Garrett Wilson, you've got Jeremy Ruckert, you've got all of these young receivers, and you have the two best, possibly the best bookend tackles in college football this year. Everything is set up for this quarterback, whoever it is, to put up very good numbers and look very good. Now it's just a matter of the execution and that, but everything is set up for them. They just have to be able to process it.
I think what Tony's speaking to here is why you recruit at this level in droves. You got three of these guys. They could all three turn out to be outstanding quarterbacks. Of course, that's not going to be proven at Ohio State. One or two of them will move on. Most likely one of the three, I would guess, would be the odds in regards to moving on somewhere else in the next 2 to 3 years, or maybe the next year. But but the probabilities say that at least one of them is going to hit and be the guy that is expected to be an Ohio State caliber quarterback. You guys have thrown around the depth chart in regards to the release of the depth chart, that there is no depth chart. Has that changed in recent years?
I mean, they kind of been dipping their toe in the water where we weren't getting it at the beginning of the week and we were getting it leading into the game, Friday, if you will, and then it was, okay, here it is 2 hours before the game. But you would sit there and you would look on the field and you would kind of see who traveled anyway to get some ideas. To now, I mean, you know, if there's not going to be any punishment from the conference or anything else for not putting one out, I don't know why you put one out, to be quite honest. There's no real reason to do it. I mean, this isn't the NFL. We don't truly have injury reports or anything else. I mean, I don't know why people, why they're going to put depth charts out. I mean, as a writer, I love depth charts, especially for the teams I don't cover, because it helps me kind of get an idea of what it is I'm looking at. But, it's not something that's been going on for, 5-7 years or anything. I don't even know if I want to put this all at the feet of Ryan Day. I mean, we have had a worldwide pandemic happen as well that have kind of made some very different circumstances that we've lived under. But I think they've let that genie out of the bottle and they're not going to put it back in. I'm not expecting us to go back to getting a depth chart on Tuesday when we're getting ready to talk to Ryan Day and get our game notes.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's just kind of something that they don't see a lot of value in, apparently. And, that's fine. I still construct my own for the different stories that I do. And to try and help people at least follow the team a little closer, I guess, and understand why certain guys are playing and maybe certain guys aren't. And, it's interesting. People are worried in April what the depth chart looks like. And it's like their own internal depth chart changes almost daily. So guys moving between 1s and 2s and 2s and 3s and vice versa. So I think that, you just have to kind of take it with a grain of salt and understand that the best players are going to play in the fall, and that's how it's going to be.
I'm always interested when I see like Iowa or some other school release a spring depth chart, like before anything happens. It's like, wow, that must be nice for the writers and the fans just to be able to talk about it. And I think coaches have pecking orders because they've run reps in order of, the leaders do it first. And so there is some pecking order. It's just interesting that some schools will put that out there and others won't. And there's no benefit to it, but for the team, it's just interesting where you've got guys who have just always done it that way and others who are like, well, why do I need to do it that way? I'm not doing that.
Well, if you have, if you have to sit there and name a starting 11 on each side of the ball and you really only have 23 guys that are ready to go, I mean, it kind of writes itself. But at Ohio State, there's so much competition in terms of how they recruit and just the attrition cycle of guys going to the league or just leaving because the opportunity isn't there for them. So, Ohio State may be trying to fill those 22 spots instead of out of 23 or 24 guys with, out of 45 guys or 60 guys. Or, and you're always, I go back to the Urban Meyer, 20, 60, 20, 20 guys are going to surpass expectations. 60 guys are going to be at expectations and 20 guys, not so much. So, if you extrapolate that over 85 scholarships, you're going to still end up with, if you're saying 80 guys are going to be, or 80% are going to be above the cut line, what are you at, in the mid 60s of guys that are going to be able to at least compete to be on a 2 deep or whatnot. So I think that, at your places like Ohio State, Alabama, some of your top programs, is probably a little bit different to come up with that depth chart. There's certainly you want to carry over previous starters. There's going to be a lot of that's going to happen there, but it's just not as cut and dry as it might be somewhere else where there's just not the depth of talent.
Well, and you look at like in Iowa where you basically start with like, okay, who are our 4th-year juniors? Like, who are the guys who have been around longest? And those are the older guys, because there's so much development that goes on there. Yeah, so you're right. There would be fewer guys to choose from. Like, what you got, one's a buffet and the other is basically the school cafeteria type of thing in terms of choice, not quality.
Tony playing the part of Colin Cowherd today.
Oh gosh,
just
drinks
glancing
soda?
Iowa.
It's soda, not pop.
I've also got to think that this quarterback battle is going to play into what's decided about how to format the spring game, because there's obviously different ways to do that. I don't know if Urban Meyer did it the same way every year, and Ryan Day has changed up from that. I haven't kept track, but of course you got a quarterback who can start for each side, and then do you float the other guy to get him equal reps?
That's a great question. I'm not sure how they'll do it. They have done it in the past where maybe the two most tenured guys would head up the two teams, and then the third guy would float between the other two the two teams or whatever. But it's hard to say what they'll want to do. But I think they'll probably get equal reps one way or the other, and it's what you do with those opportunities. That's what I think the coaches are looking for. When you have an opportunity to make a play, did you make a play? When you had an opportunity to get us out of a bad play, did you get us out of the bad play and into a good play? So they want to try and put them in some positions that can illustrate their strengths and weaknesses. And it's interesting to me, we're down to 10 days before this game, and we still haven't heard anything definitive about what, the few fans who are going to be able to attend. As far as I know, I think they did put some feelers out there for some people to respond to pick up some tickets, but it's been very hush-hush, it seems to me, so far. It doesn't look like public's going to be invited, so other than just a few select people. So that'll be interesting itself, but that's kind of the day and age that we're living in right now. And as I said, I got my second shot today, and we're moving closer and closer to what we hope is going to be a more normal second half of 2021.
And you're feeling good, Steve?
I'm feeling good so far. It was the second dose of the Pfizer, so I don't know if that's
dead arm is coming. Dead arm is coming.
Big V Vinay chiming in here with his first question of the day. He's got thoughts on change to the 4-2-5 formation defensively. Where do you think Demario McCall is going to be playing in the secondary?
Well, I'll just throw in my two thoughts, and I don't have a lot to say about either of those things. I don't look at 4-2-5 as being their, quote, base defense. I think 4-2-5 is something that they've been playing with this spring, one, because Dallas Gant's not there, where if he was there, maybe they'd be running more 4-3. And also Mitchell Melton is out, so the number of linebackers you have is down. So you don't necessarily need to run a 4-3 to get everybody reps. You can get everybody reps with a 4-2-5. And you've got extra safeties and extra DBs perhaps that you want to get more reps to. So I think it's more a function of getting more people their feet wet on the field at a position where you got more guys is kind of how I look at it. I think they'll do whatever they think is best for the opponent, the down the distance, the score, 4-3 or 4-2-5. So I don't worry too much about philosophically, as long as you're getting stops, that's all that matters. So if they get into the season and teams are still moving the ball and putting up 300 yards passing against them as they did last year, then they're going to have to experiment, come up with some other ideas. But I don't think it's going to be something that it's now a 4-2-5 defense. And the thing on McCall, I just look at that as a lark. I can't honestly believe that they're going to play him any meaningful plays on defense during the season. I don't buy that, not for 1 minute, because they don't substitute a whole lot to begin with. And what is he at worst? 5th, 6th, 7th on the depth chart at cornerback. Tyreek Johnson supposedly has made a little bit of a run here this spring. Ryan Watts has looked good. LeJon Cavazos. And then you've got Cam Brown and Sevyn Banks, who haven't played, obviously, or because of the injury, or Banks tried to, and I guess got hurt or whatever. But so he's no higher than 6th. I mean, he's going to play. So no, I don't see much of a role for him on defense unless the score is 45-0.
Yeah, and like where would he be? I think he's probably a nickel in the slot somewhere, and he'd be behind at least three other guys. I know Ryan Day has said he's been impressive, but that might be words of encouragement as much as anything. It just you don't see something like this late, but more power to him for trying something, and if it sticks, that's great. I still think he would have been an outstanding running back in the MAC. Just running through those defenses. In terms of the Ohio State 4-2-5, we keep hearing about the inside linebackers. We don't really hear much about like who is repping at Sam. And Kayvon Pope was there last year as a backup. Craig Young was there last year as a backup. Kayvon Pope has been mentioned as an inside linebacker. Craig Young has been playing some safety and some linebacker in that hybrid role. So I think you're going to see more of it. I don't know. You may not see much of it in the spring because the spring game and what they actually do may differ. But I think, like Steve said, depending on opponent, depending on down distance, whatever, you have to play it. You can't. No more 4-4, and they have enough secondary options to try to figure out what to do with the 4-2-5. They've got Craig Young, who they like, who's dropped some weight so he can play safety, can come up and handle the run, do some blitzing, and they've got some guys behind him. Court Williams will be in that mix this summer when he returns. So I think there's something to it, but they also have their linebackers are versatile enough to you can send somebody outside if you want, like Kayvon Pope has done it. I think Cody Simon, sophomore, could do it. Reed Carrico is athletic enough to play any of the three, but I would be disappointed in the progress if there isn't more of the hybrid Michigan type defense that Greg Madison and Al Washington brought with that hybrid defender. That's where the game is moving, and Craig Young being that guy who can fill that role, who played linebacker last year, but came to Ohio State as a 6'3", 6'4", 200-pound guy, basketball player, wide receiver, like 700, 800 yards receiving as a senior, 20 points a game in basketball. I think he ran a 10.7 100 meter. And now this is your hybrid guy. And so use him. And they're recruiting that guy. And they brought another one in Jalen Johnson in the 2021 class. So if you're recruiting these guys, it's time to put that defense in and get something out of it and create some havoc. And basketball has moved to positionless, basketball quite a bit on offense. I think you're going to see some of that on defense. You're seeing some of it on offense as well. So you got to have guys who can do many things. And I think going that 4-2-5 is one way to make it happen because Pete Werner is gone.
Yeah, I think a lot of the good points have already been hit by Tony and Steve, so I won't go long here, but don't get caught up in what the number is. I mean, whether or not it's 4-2-5 or 4-3. I mean, because the truth of the matter is whatever that, if it's a fifth defensive back or if it's a linebacker or whatever, it's about who is that guy? Who is that Craig Young? Is that a Court Williams? I mean, I don't think it's a situation of where I would allow myself to get too caught up in what the nomenclature is, because it's just a matter of getting your best 11 out there in a system that is going to work for you and the defense that you're hoping to run. Tony talks about Al Washington and Greg Madison bringing a Michigan type of defense in terms of some schematic things. Just hope they don't bring a Michigan defense in terms of some of the outputs that we'd seen, especially under what Don Brown was selling up there. But yeah, I wouldn't allow myself to get too bound up by it, and let's just bury the 4-4 for now until eternity, because pretty much my view of the 4-4 was not a great one, and I think that the stats would back that up.
Anthony Manzano representing the Miami Hurricanes. I was looking through the live chat. I found just so many different fan bases represented, more so than Ohio State in this thing. So you guys have to field questions from all over the nation here. We've got Anthony with, I'm wondering, as a Hurricane fan, when was the last time a true freshman quarterback started the first game of the season and then played all 3 years at Ohio State? Terrell Pryor, game 3, correct? Didn't start
Yeah,
game
he didn't
1.
start the first game.
Came in against USC late
Leaster.
and then started week 3. That's the closest I can come up with.
It's in 78.
And Braxton Miller didn't start the first game in 2011 either.
I actually created a list on something else from like a month or two ago on Excel, and I have all the game 1 starters listed here. You have to go, I mean, at least going back to 71, because that's as far as I wanted to go on this project. And Art was the only one that I came up with. I mean, yeah, you've had redshirt freshmen, you've had, Pryor in game 3 or whatnot, but no, they came close a couple of times, but 78 is the last time it happened.
There you go, Anthony. Arch Leachster, 78 against Penn State. 19-0, 5 interceptions, 21 on the season, but finished in the top 5 in the Heisman, I believe, then in 79, 80, and 81.
Yeah. Pryor and Miller are the only true freshmen, I think, that have played multiple games at quarterback for Ohio State since then, I think. And if McCord doesn't play this year, it wouldn't count this year. These guys, they're listed as redshirt freshmen on the roster, although last year didn't count. It's just all semantics thing. The guys who played appreciable amount of time, they're listing them as sophomores who were first-year players, although we know in the back of our mind they have an extra year at the end if they want it. And the same thing would apply. All of the quarterbacks have 4 years of eligibility remaining. It's just, how do you want to handle it and look at it from a semantic standpoint?
Roger Smith, thank you so much for the Super Chat contribution. Appreciate that. A little homework for everyone. If you're unfamiliar with either Buckeye Scoop, Buckeye Grove, or Bucknuts, I think you need to check out at least one of those 3, if not 2 or 3 of those 3, once you get off here listening to Kevin, Tony, and Steve break down Ohio State football. Check them out, both the free versions and the subscription models. If you're big Ohio State fans, I would certainly let you know to dive deep into those 3 sites. College Football Addict, rumblings about, and before that, again, Roger Smith, thank you so much for the Super Chat. College Football Addict, rumblings about who's looking good between all those running back candidates. Anything there, Steve?
Yeah, I think Ryan Day was optimistic and happy with what he saw in the scrimmage they had last Saturday or last Friday, I guess, and is looking forward once again to getting those guys going on Saturday for another scrimmage. And, again, we didn't get names, but I think you're assuming that's Master Tig, Mayan Williams, maybe Travion Henderson, perhaps Marcus Crowley, hard to say, but I think that there's got to be some excitement there at running back. If he's happy about what he saw and they were able to gain some yardage running the football, running in behind that offensive line, that's got to be a good thing, because that's where the success of this program kind of begins. It's an offensive line-driven program, and if those guys are getting off the ball and blocking and making it hard for opponents to get hands on the running back or to get to the quarterback, they're going to put up a lot of points. So to me, I think that was a good sign. I don't have a name to give you, unfortunately. I wish I did. But from what Ryan Day said, he was happy with how hard the running backs ran in the scrimmage that they had last Friday. And to me, that can only be a good thing.
And if you're not taking guys down to the ground all the time in practice, I mean, you got to figure it hurts somebody like Mayan Williams, who, one of the biggest parts of his game is that you can't get that guy down to the ground or whatever. So, I think it's difficult to be able to really get a full read in terms of a guy that gets a lot of yards after contact and whatnot and sheds a lot of tackles. So, again, not to go back to my standard boilerplate answer about the quarterback competition, I don't know if we're going to know a lot there. I think, though, with having an incumbent returning the way that Master Teague is, I would still expect, because I saw a question come through earlier about game 1 running back starter. I still don't have any reason to doubt that it's going to be Master Teague. I certainly think he's going to be pressed all year long. I think we could see, over a 12 game regular season, I think we could probably see games where other guys might get that, that first snap. It certainly could happen. But, I think just using prevailing knowledge and just, a little bit here and a little bit there, somebody's not only going to have to be equal to Master Teague to surpass him, but they're going to have to be able to, I think they're going to have to be even a little bit better. And when you're dealing with a lot of guys who, with the 2 freshmen that everybody's ready to put into the starting lineup, or some of the younger guys, you need to sit there and see that they're going to be able to hold on to the rock, because there's no way to move yourself down the line quickly than a couple of fumbles.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's going to be Master Teague. He takes the first snap. But everybody, and I've said this before, everybody in that running back room saw Teague lose the job last year, saw that somebody take the job from him last year. And so they know it's possible, so they would have that same mentality. But I think the room is incredibly deep. I've maybe on the show here, I've compared it to like the 91 team, or the 90 or 91 team, when they had like Raymond and Robert Smith and Jeff Cothran and Eddie George. You can go back to like the 2010 team with Boom Herron and Brandon Sane and Carlos Hyde and Jamal Berry and Rod Smith, like all of these different guys who could play. But I think they've got, I think four of the guys could start good enough to start right now. And then you've got, Evan Pryor, who can do some things for you, and Steele Chambers, who could do some things for you. But I think those other guys, and Marcus Crowley has had some big runs in practice and scrimmages, and so there's a number of guys, but I still think it's going to be Master Teague to start, and then it's going to be up to everybody else to. It's going to be such a fight for carries. And Tony Alford said he's never played 6 guys before, so there's going to be some uncomfortable conversations. And I think they normally only want like 5 actually in terms of scholarship running backs, if I recall, and so they're over that limit right now, and it's going to make things difficult.
Yeah, I think the running back situation for that 1990 team that lost to Michigan on a 4th down call, where Greg Fry was asked to run the option and kept it with yes, there were at least 3 NFL running backs on that team. There was Scotty Graham, there was Robert Smith. I know Butler Binote wasn't an NFL running back, but somebody else was. Anyway, you ran down a ton of guys between 90 and 92. And I just remember running down the list at the time thinking, my goodness. And then if you look at Robert Smith's numbers, shoot, if he would have stuck around the NFL, he'd be vying for a Hall of Fame spot. He was that good his final 3 or 4 seasons. All right, we had somebody in here, I've lost track of the comment, but asking about Noah Potter, who, depending on whether he was redshirted, which sounds right, would be a redshirt junior from that 2019 class as a defensive end, whether he still has a future at Ohio State.
Ryan Day said he's working at defensive tackle right now. He's a redshirt sophomore, and is getting a look on inside a defensive tackle. So he's a big dude too. He's like 6'6", 270, I think is maybe what he was listed at, but he's got to put on a little bit of weight if he's going to be on the interior. So I don't, that's a thinner position in defensive end. So the road to playing time is quicker, but he's going to have to get low to have that leverage.
Yeah, I was just looking at my roster. It says here 6'6", 270, which, and the other thing is him being 6'6" doesn't help him necessarily with, with getting that leverage, as Tony says. But I think he's a good football player, and I think that somehow, some way, he's going to try and work his way into the mix this year as a third-year player. And there's no reason why he can't be a part of the success of this team, either at defensive end or defensive tackle. It's just kind of mastering one of the 2 spots, I think. Or I say it's 2 spots, but they have, I think all 4 of them are kind of specialized, in what they ask each of the 4 defensive linemen to do within the scheme. So, there's a nose and a however they describe it. But I'm interested to see. I think he's a guy. It's time for the light bulb to go on for him, and and for him to get in there and make some plays on Saturdays. I think he was a good prospect for them to sign from here in the state of Ohio, and no reason why he can't be a guy that maybe makes that late career rise, like a Sam Hubbard in his last 2-3 years as a college player, really comes on and makes a big difference.
Yeah, I don't want to make excuses for anybody. Let's just remember that they had 3 spring practices last year, and then really disjointed, segmented small group practices or whatnot. And you really had to just kind of focus on getting your ones ready last year as much as you could. So, I really don't, I really am not in the selling mode in terms of anybody of saying that they're not going to be able to put it together when you look at last season as being kind of a wash for anybody that wasn't, certainly in the 2 deep. And even by saying the 2 deep, I would say, of 44, I'd say if you weren't in the top 35, you generally probably were not seeing a ton of meaningful practice reps and whatnot. So that's what makes this year so much more important. So I think that, we might have a better idea about some of these guys here in a few months after they get through spring and summer, and we see what the incoming guys look like, the ones that have not enrolled as of yet, that are your regular summer enrollees, and as we get into August practice or whatnot. But there certainly is an opportunity. But even if you're in there at the 3 tech or 1 tech or wherever, they're going to have you penciled in as, there's still going to be guys ahead of you. So just because you move from one position to another, there are not a lot of clear paths to the field on this Ohio State roster.
Well, and keep in mind, they're going to be losing 4 defensive tackles after this year, and possibly 3 defensive ends after this year if Zach Harrison has the junior year he's expecting and goes pro, assuming nobody cashes in their free year. So there's certainly still room and a place for Noah Potter as a 4th-year guy next year, and we'll see what happens this year. It's deeper than anticipated with the return of Haskell Garrett, though.
Yakov 22, thank you so much for the super chat effort. Yakov having some issues contributing there. I don't know what the answer is there, Yakov, but we appreciate the try there. You can contribute to the channel as well by using Amazon, using the link that we provide in the description in this section. You got Tony Gerdeman on the line from Buckeye Scoop, Kevin Noon, Buckeye Grove, Steve Helwagen, of course, senior Big Ten writer at 247 Sports Bucknuts. Tony, you had brought to the table before we started to record the black stripes have been lifted from a few players. You'll do a better job of explaining more accurately exactly what that is, as those particular players have proven themselves as Buckeyes.
Yeah, anytime all new Buckeyes have a black strip of tape put on their helmet, and they have to prove themselves in practice and workouts and things like that. And once they have done that, then a player, after a good practice or what have you, will can get his black stripe removed, and then he becomes an official member of the team. And so that has happened 3 times this spring. The first one was redshirt freshman Jacoby Cowan, defensive lineman, who was hurt all last year, and so never really had an opportunity to practice and get that black stripe removed. This past week, it was Marvin Harrison Jr., the freshman wide receiver, was the first one, followed by Jack Sawyer, defensive end. I don't think either are gigantic surprises. Jack Sawyer was probably the betting favorite to be the first member of the 2021 class to have it removed, and I say he was the second just because that's the order they were announced in following practice, because that's when it happens. It's after practice, so it's not like, first Marvin and then Jack Sawyer. It's just, one has to go first. And then Marvin Harrison Jr., the son of an NFL Hall of Fame wide receiver, you would expect. He's really impressed some people. He's a big kid, 6'4", probably 210, something like that. He looks legitimately like an ex-receiver right now. And so those 2 guys, by the merits of their practice, halfway through spring, it's not completely unheard of, but it's really hard for true freshmen to get their black stripes removed in the spring. So don't lose sight of that fact either.
Yeah, we certainly.
Tremendous.
Yeah,
go ahead, Jeff.
I was just going to say we're not that far removed from the first time a true freshman, an incoming freshman, an early enrollee lost his black stripe during spring practice. Generally, it wasn't until fall practice, and then they would kind of trickle out at the beginning, and then they would happen a little bit of a quicker order. But I'll remind everybody on the black stripe program that Urban Meyer started, they're not benchmarks there. That you don't have to go out there and lift a certain amount of weight and make a certain amount of plays or whatever. It's very much a motivational tool or whatever. A lot of people get worried why player XYZ still has his black stripe on or whatnot. Coaches know what they're doing there. It's a motivational tool in a lot of ways. Some guys need the reward of losing that black stripe once they've earned it. It's not just we're going to take it off just because we think you need a cookie or something. But some guys perform better in that instance, and some guys perform better being pissed off that they still have it and seeing seeing their three sweet mates over there at the towers all without their black stripe, and they still have it, and and it pushes them to drive harder and do more. So again, there's not a chart. Ryan Day isn't walking around with an index card checking little boxes off for each of these guys to decide when it's time to take their stripe off.
Yeah, just a tremendous tribute to those guys, how hard they've worked since they've been at Ohio State. That's got to get the endorsement of the senior leadership council, Mick Marotti, the head coach, the coordinator, the position coach, his big brother. Everybody's got to kind of be on the same path with that. And, I think it's a good roadmap to tell you who some of these guys are who are going to get to play. I think it was good. Jacoby Cowan, I think, got his off, and he's a holdover from last year as a freshman, and didn't get to play. I think he may or may not have been banged up last year as well, but a good sign for him that maybe he's healthy and can help him as well on the defensive line. So, you look at it, a lot of positive things coming up when you see that those young guys are kind of passing that initiation test and becoming full-fledged Ohio State football sacred brotherhood team members.
Sometimes my brain makes an odd connection. So when Tony was explaining that even though they both were being stripped of the black stripe, that obviously there's an order to the announcement, much like Hall of Fames. Like I've heard this trivia question a number of times. Who's the first inductee to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame? And I believe it's Chuck Berry, because he's alphabetically in front of Elvis Presley, Johnny Cash, Jerry Lee Lewis. But there were like 7 of them inducted. So just technically it's Chuck Berry, but there were like 7 of them included. So, all right. Good stuff from all of these gentlemen. Of course, as usual, for a 100th time, we docked Kevin for about 10 shows, but again, Tony Gerdeman, Buckeye Scoop, Kevin Noon from Buckeye Grove, and Steve Helwagen from 247 Sports on Bucknuts. And you got to check out the work with these guys that they do all the time. And I want to give proper time to your other online appearances. So Tony, we'll start with you, and everybody lock in on these.
Yeah, you can check out my podcast, the Buckeye Weekly Podcast, usually every Tuesday and Thursday. Me and Tom Moore talking all things Ohio State, and you can find me at buckeyescoop.com any other time.
Yeah, you can catch me on the BIA podcast, Buckeye Grove Instant Access. I wish I could give you a schedule, but haven't been real reliable on that as of late. We'll get better. Going to be hitting the road here next week doing some recruiting coverage out of state, so check out all of that over at buckeyegrove.com.
Yep, I'm just at bucknuts.com. I do participate in our Bucknuts Morning 5 every now and then, something that we post every morning, usually around 8:30 to 9:30, a quick 5 or 10 minute podcast of what's happening in the day's events. Usually Dave Biddle or Dan Rubin are on it, and I'm on there sometimes, but yeah, that's all we got going on. And obviously spring football, we're kind of moving into the home stretch now with the game on April the 17th, and looking forward to wrapping up the spring with everything else that's going on. And I'll also be doing a little bit of recruiting coverage over the weekend, maybe some basketball, maybe some football. So no shortage of things happening at Ohio State.
Lewis reminds everyone in the live chat, please share the links to the videos out there on social media. We got a number of questions coming in that were topics that had been covered. So again, if you jumped in 10 or 15, 20 minutes late, most likely we covered your topic. So wait for the video to post in about 5 to 10 minutes and check it out from the start. Guys, it's always appreciated. Hope everyone out there appreciates what these three bring to the table each and every week. For 100 shows in the books, Ohio State Buckeyes Live. Thanks, guys.
Take care.